The night I accidentally fell asleep on the Alpha King's chest. His wolf had already broken 2 women, killed a third, and hadn't truly slept in 11 months. I didn't know any of that. I didn't know his name, I didn't know his curse. I didn't even know I had walked into the wrong room. All I knew was that I'd been working for 21 straight hours, my legs had stopped listening to my brain, and the warm bed I found looked too inviting to resist. When I woke up the next morning, 40 wolves were staring at me. The Alpha King's arm was wrapped protectively around my waist, and the palace healer was whispering in disbelief. His heartbeat. It's normal. That was the morning everyone started calling me a miracle. But my story didn't begin in the Alpha King's bed. It began the day my own family traded me for taxes. My name is Belle. At 22 years old, I discovered something heartbreaking. To a starving village, a daughter can become currency. Our settlement, Den Hallow, had suffered through 2 terrible winters. Crops failed, livestock died, and every family struggled to survive. The Dominion's tax collector arrived one cold Tuesday morning carrying nothing more than a leather ledger. He counted our grain. He counted our animals. Then, he counted me. Age: 22. My father answered quietly. Healthy? Yes. I stood only a few feet away. The collector never even looked at me. He scribbled in his book before announcing, "One healthy female will erase 18 months of unpaid taxes." That female was me, my father argued, for exactly 4 minutes. Then he lowered his head. I accept. For a brief moment, I hated him. Then I looked behind him. My little brother was clutching his empty stomach. My younger sister hadn't smiled in weeks. How could I blame him? He wasn't choosing between me and money. He was choosing between me and everyone else's survival. So I packed my small bag, hugged my family goodbye, and climbed into the transport wagon without shedding a single tear. I refused to give the tax collector that satisfaction. 3 days later, I arrived at Ironhold Citadel. Calling it a castle would be generous. It looked more like a mountain carved into the shape of a fortress. Every wall was built for defense. Every hallway was watched. Every gate reminded you that escaping wasn't an option. Along with 6 other debt transfers, I stood in line before the head of domestic staff. Her name was Dagna. She looked capable of throwing a horse across a river. "You belong to the Dominion now," she announced. "You'll work 6 days a week. You'll eat what's provided. You'll follow orders." Then she assigned us jobs: kitchen, laundry, floor maintenance. I became a floor maid. Honestly, I considered myself lucky. Until Dagna gave us one final warning. "Whatever happens, stay away from the West Wing." A nervous boy beside me raised his hand. "Why?" Her face became frighteningly serious. "Because the Alpha King lives there." Nobody spoke. She continued anyway. The last 3 women who entered his chambers didn't survive. 1 died, 2 lived, but never spoke another word. The courtyard became so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. I promised myself I'd never go anywhere near that place. Funny how life enjoys laughing at promises. My first week passed quietly. Scrub floors, carry buckets, sleep, repeat. If I worked hard enough, nobody noticed me. And in a palace full of powerful wolves, being invisible felt wonderfully safe. That changed when I met Tessa. She was a cheerful laundry maid with bright red hair and absolutely no respect for personal space. "You look like you need a friend," she declared before introducing herself. From then on, lunch breaks belonged to us. And thanks to Tessa, I learned everything servants whispered about the Alpha King. His name was never spoken aloud, only his title. Apparently, he'd inherited the throne 6 years earlier after his father's mysterious death. Some called him the greatest alpha in history. Others believed he'd become something far worse than human. His wolf had completely taken over. For 11 months, no healer had been able to bring the man back. Every Luna candidate sent to him suffered the same fate. The first woman's wolf completely submitted. Her mind never recovered. The second survived, but spent every day staring blankly at walls. The third. Her heart simply stopped beating. After that, the elder council abandoned all attempts to find him a mate. Without a Luna, there would be no heir. Without an heir, every neighboring kingdom began circling like hungry wolves, including Lady Vina Hale. She arrived exactly 17 days after I started working. The moment she entered the great hall, every servant stepped aside. Elegant, beautiful, dangerous. She carried herself like someone already wearing a queen's crown. I happened to be scrubbing the marble floor nearby when the diplomatic meeting began. I tried not to listen. Unfortunately, the floor was directly beneath them. Lady Vina spoke confidently. My family proposes a marriage alliance. The Alpha King requires a Luna. Rorik the Alpha's beta shook his head. His Majesty has suspended all mate selection. Lady Vina smiled. No. He's surrendered. The room froze. Then, her eyes landed on me. You. Bring me wine. I looked up. I'm sorry, my lady. I'm assigned to floor maintenance. I don't serve drinks. Her smile disappeared. I wasn't asking. I glanced toward the silver pitcher sitting less than an arm's length away from her. It's right beside you. You can reach it. The entire hall fell silent. Even Rorik closed his eyes, as though praying for my survival. Lady Vina slowly stood. What is your name? Belle. A debt transfer? Yes. She looked me up and down before saying loudly enough for everyone to hear. Interesting. The Dominion now employs field mice. Several nobles laughed. Not because it was funny, because powerful people enjoy laughing together. I should have stayed quiet. Instead, I smiled. Field mice clean floors surprisingly well. The laughter stopped instantly. Lady Vina's expression never changed. She simply turned toward Rorik. I recommend disciplinary action. Then she walked away. At the time, I thought the conversation was over. I had no idea those 30 seconds would completely change my fate, because before sunrise the next morning, I would receive a new assignment. The West Wing. And beyond one forbidden door, someone with golden eyes was already waiting for me. The next morning, I stood outside the West Wing with a bucket in one hand and a broom in the other. I had barely slept. All night, Tessa's warning echoed in my head. Nobody goes inside. The women who did never came back the same. The 2 guards stationed outside the corridor looked at me with something that almost resembled pity. One unlocked the heavy iron gate. Good luck, he muttered. That was the least comforting thing anyone had ever said to me. The West Wing was unnaturally quiet. Unlike the rest of Ironhold, there were no servants rushing through the halls, no soldiers laughing, no clattering dishes. Only silence. The kind of silence that made every footstep sound too loud. At the end of the corridor stood a massive oak door. Taking a deep breath, I pushed it open. Then I stopped. The room looked as though a tornado had passed through it. A huge oak table had been split clean in half. Chairs lay shattered across the floor. An iron candelabra was lodged halfway into a stone wall. Deep claw marks scarred the granite floor, stretching from one end of the room to the other. Not random scratches. A path. Back and forth. Back and forth. Like a trapped animal had spent the entire night pacing inside a cage. My chest tightened. This wasn't the room of a monster. It was the room of someone losing a battle with himself. Then I heard it. Breathing. Deep. Slow. Powerful enough to vibrate through the floor beneath my feet. The sound came from another door. A door that should have been closed. Instead, it stood slightly open. Just a few inches. Every instinct screamed at me to leave. Tell Dagna. Pretend I'd seen nothing. Instead, curiosity won. I walked forward and gently pushed the door open. The Alpha King sat on the floor against the far wall. He wasn't wearing a shirt. Scars crossed his chest, shoulders, and ribs like memories carved into skin. His dark hair had grown longer than military standards allowed. But none of that held my attention. His eyes did. They were completely golden. Not amber. Not hazel. Pure wolf. The kind of eyes that belong to a predator at the top of the food chain. They locked onto mine. The room suddenly felt very small. He didn't growl. He didn't stand. He simply watched me. The silence became unbearable. So, naturally, I said the most ridiculous thing possible. You've destroyed all your furniture. Nothing. I glanced around the room. The table is definitely beyond saving. The mattress looks like it offended you personally. And I'm honestly impressed you managed to throw a candelabra into solid stone. His expression didn't change. Still. Those golden eyes never left me. I swallowed nervously. I'm Belle, the new chambermaid. I wasn't supposed to come in here. The door was open, and I thought someone might be hurt. I waited. Several long seconds passed. Then a low rumble escaped his chest. Not a warning. Not anger. Almost. Acceptance. I chose to believe it meant I could leave alive. I'll clean the outer room, I said with an awkward smile. And I promise not to bother you. I slowly backed out and gently closed the door. Only after it clicked shut did I realize I'd been holding my breath. For the next 4 hours, I cleaned the outer chamber. Every few minutes I caught myself looking toward the slightly open door. He never came out. But somehow, I knew he was still watching. The next morning, the room had been destroyed again. Different furniture. Same claw marks. Same open door. Exactly the same narrow gap. Again I cleaned. Again he watched. Neither of us spoke. By the third morning, the silence no longer felt uncomfortable. It felt expected. That afternoon, I stared at my lunch. One dry bread roll. A piece of salted venison. An apple with a bruised side. Then I remembered what Tessa had told me. The Alpha never touches the meals sent to his room. I sighed, wrapped half my lunch in a cloth, and carried it upstairs. When I finished cleaning, I placed the bundle just outside the open door. I don't know if you're eating, I said quietly, but this is better than nothing. I'll leave it here. Then I walked away. The following morning, the food was gone. Every crumb. I couldn't stop smiling. The next day, I brought food again. Then the next. Soon it became our strange little routine. I never entered his room. He never spoke. I left food. He accepted it. Somehow, that felt like progress. On the 6th day, something unexpected waited for me. A folded blanket. Thick. Soft. Lined with expensive wolf fur. It rested exactly where I'd left his dinner. I stared at it in disbelief. The nights in the servants' dormitory had been freezing. I'd never complained. Yet somehow, he'd noticed. I carefully picked up the blanket. It still carried his scent. Fresh pine. Rain. Forest earth. Thank you, I whispered. From behind the door came that familiar low rumble. For the first time, I laughed. You really don't talk much, do you? Silence. Then, another quiet rumble. Almost like he was answering anyway. The days passed. Our strange friendship grew without either of us understanding it. I brought him jerky. The next morning I found thick wool socks waiting beside the door. My boots had holes. He'd noticed. I talked while I swept. Mostly silly things. Kitchen gossip. Stories about my village. Complaints about endless scrubbing. He never interrupted. But every so often, that quiet rumble came from behind the door. As if he was listening. As if he enjoyed hearing my voice. Then, on the 12th morning, everything changed. I was sweeping when I heard something I'd never expected. A voice. Broken. Hoarse. As though it hadn't been used in months. Belle. The broom slipped from my hands. My heart stopped. Had he just said my name? I stood frozen. Tears burned behind my eyes. The most feared Alpha King on the continent. The man everyone believed had become nothing more than a beast. Had fought through months of silence. Just to say my name. From that day onward, the claw marks stopped appearing. The furniture remained standing. The room grew calmer. Almost peaceful. Then, one morning, I found a single wildflower resting beside the empty food cloth. There were no gardens near the west wing. No open windows. No explanation. Just one tiny purple flower. I pressed it carefully inside my old herbal book. Some gifts were too precious to question. Day after day, the door opened a little wider. 3 inches. 5 inches. Almost a foot. It wasn't an accident anymore. It was an invitation. And on the 17th day, after working 21 exhausting hours without rest, I finally accepted it. I stepped through that open door, never imagining it would change both our lives forever. By the 17th day, I had stopped fearing the West Wing. Instead, I looked forward to it. It had become the quietest part of my day. The only place in the entire palace where no one shouted orders at me. The only place where someone actually noticed when I was cold. But that day was different. The Keldrath delegation was still at Ironhold, and Lady Vina had ordered a grand state banquet. Every servant was pushed beyond their limits. I scrubbed floors before sunrise, carried heavy trays through crowded halls, polished silver until my fingers cramped, cleaned spilled wine, ran messages between kitchens. By the time midnight arrived, I had been working for 21 straight hours. My body felt numb. Every step required effort. Even breathing seemed exhausting. Yet Dagna still had one final task for me. The West Wing. I wanted to protest. Instead, I nodded and picked up my cleaning supplies. The familiar guards opened the gate without a word. As I walked into the corridor, something immediately felt different. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It felt peaceful. When I entered the outer chamber, I blinked in surprise. Nothing had been destroyed. The repaired table still stood where I'd left it. The chairs remained upright. No claw marks covered the floor. A smile spread across my face. You've been behaving. From beyond the slightly open door came a soft rumble. Almost amused, I laughed quietly and finished cleaning. When I was done, I looked toward the inner room. The door stood open wider than ever before. Nearly a foot. It wasn't an accident. It was an invitation. I hesitated, then stepped inside. Kalin lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. His golden eyes shifted toward me the moment I entered. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of them. I brought you something. I held up a cloth bundle. The cooks served venison tonight. I managed to save you some. I walked over and placed it on the bedside table. As I straightened, the room suddenly spun. My vision blurred. I grabbed the edge of the table before I could fall. Kalin stood instantly. Not aggressively. Not like a predator. Like someone genuinely worried. I'm okay, I whispered. I tried to finish my sentence. Instead, I yawned. Hard. Then laughed weakly. I think I forgot what sleeping feels like. He took one careful step closer. Watching me. Waiting. I'll just sit down for a second. I lowered myself onto the edge of the bed. My legs aren't listening anymore. The mattress felt impossibly soft. For one brief moment, I closed my eyes. Just 1 second. Just one breath. That was all I needed. Or so I thought. The next thing I knew, I was falling. Not onto the floor. Forward. Straight toward him. My cheek landed against warm skin. Strong arms instinctively caught me before I could hit the mattress. I should have pulled away. Instead, every muscle in my body simply gave up. The steady rhythm beneath my ear filled the room. Thump. 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 His heartbeat. Slow. Powerful. Steady. Without realizing it, my breathing matched his. The warmth surrounding me felt strangely familiar. Safe. Like I'd finally found a place where my body could stop fighting. For the first time since arriving at Ironhold, I truly relaxed. And within seconds, I was asleep. While I slept, something extraordinary happened. For nearly a year, the palace healers had documented the Alpha King's condition every single day. His heartbeat never slowed. His wolf never rested. Even powerful sedatives couldn't calm him. His body remained trapped in a constant state of battle. Until that night, as I slept peacefully against his chest, his heartbeat gradually slowed. The frantic rhythm disappeared. His breathing became calm. Even. Human. The beast. Finally let go. For the first time in 11 months. The Alpha King fell into real sleep. Morning sunlight spilled across the room. Soft voices drifted through the doorway. Then I heard someone whisper urgently, "Don't move." It was Rorik. His voice sounded tense. "Belle. Please don't move." Confused, I slowly opened my eyes. For several seconds, I had no idea where I was. Then reality crashed into me. My cheek rested against Kalin's chest. One of his arms circled my waist, holding me close. Not tightly, not possessively, protectively. My face turned bright red. Oh no. Very carefully, I tried to sit up. The arm around me tightened. A deep growl vibrated through his chest. It wasn't directed at me. It was aimed at the doorway. Slowly, I lifted my head. My heart nearly stopped. The entrance was packed. Rorik, Dagna, Margaret, the palace healer, guards, servants, officials. At least 40 wolves stood frozen in complete silence. Every single one stared at us with expressions ranging from confusion to absolute disbelief. No one moved. No one even blinked. Then, Kalin's golden eyes opened. The first thing he looked at was me. Not the crowd. Not the guards. Me. His expression softened for a brief moment. Then he noticed everyone watching. The softness vanished. A low warning growl rolled through the room. Rorik reacted instantly. "Everyone out." His voice echoed through the chamber. "Now." The crowd scattered immediately. Within seconds the room emptied. Just before the heavy door closed, Margaret whispered something that made every hair on my arm stand up. His heartbeat. It's normal. For the first time in 11 months. The Alpha King's heartbeat is completely normal. The news spread through Ironhold faster than wildfire. By lunchtime, every servant knew. By dinner, every soldier knew. By sunset, the entire Dominion knew. The debt transfer maid from a forgotten farming village had done what no healer, no ancient ritual, and no Luna candidate had ever managed. She had calmed the Alpha King's wolf, simply by falling asleep on him. Unfortunately, not everyone saw it as a miracle. Some saw it as an opportunity. An hour later, I found myself sitting in Dagna's office. Across from me sat Dagna, Rorik, and Margaret. Before anyone could ask the first question, the office door opened. Lord Aldrich Morn walked in. Lady Vina followed close behind. The way they looked at me made my stomach tighten. Not with gratitude. Not with curiosity. With calculation. At that moment, I realized surviving the Alpha King had never been my greatest challenge. Surviving the people who wanted to use him would be far more dangerous. Thanks for staying with us until the very end. If you enjoyed Belle and Kalin's journey, there's plenty more where that came from. Every week, we bring you powerful alpha romances, billionaire love stories, mafia dramas, and emotional Reddit-style tales filled with unforgettable twists. So, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and let us know in the comments What do you think would happen next? Would Belle become the Alpha King's Luna? Or would the people around them turn her into a weapon against the only man who ever made her feel safe? We'll see you in the next story. Until then, keep believing that sometimes the most unexpected moments lead to the greatest love stories.